All right, so I've imported my color sampler here, and if we expand this out, we can see that it says to place in orthographic camera. So an easy way to do that if you don't already have one is add a screen image, and then we can just delete this. We can drag our color sampler in, and the script itself doesn't need the orthographic camera, but this really helpful debug output does. So that's why we're going to pull it in here. And now you might notice that in the logger it says please select an input texture. So let's come to our script, make sure that is still selected. And for my input texture, I'm just going to go with the device camera texture, but you can use any texture. You could even pull in like a face texture if you want to sample someone's skin color. But you can use whatever texture you want. So our script is now running, and to see that it's actually running, let's turn on this debug, and that will pop up this little debug output. So if I move around, you can see this background changing. You can see this little red square here. So this red square is showing our sampled area, and then this background is showing our sampled color. So all the pixels in that red box are being averaged together to get our sampled color. So you can see as we move around, that is updating. And if we look at our script here, we can change our sample size so we can make it a smaller area. If you're worried about too much sampling, because it's a 20 by 20 pixel area versus 40 by 40. So you can change that size for how granular you want to get. And then we have an X and a Y slider. So if I move the X lower, you can see our square moves to the left. I move it higher, it moves to the right. And then the Y, the low value is going to be down low, high value up high. So this is good if you want to kind of fine tune where on an image you're sampling the colors. I'm just going to put this back to 0.5 for each. All right, so we have a few other options here. We have this run on frame update. So you can see this is constantly running as we move this around. But we can turn this off and call it manually. There is a script API that's available. And to see that, you can open up advanced. And we'll come back to some of these later, but you can set the X position via another script, this Y position, your sample size, and then you can call sample colors to actually do that sampling. So if you have like a button, you could hook it up to scripts that call sample colors if you don't want to be constantly running the calculations. Now let's keep this on frame updated for now. All right, so this is nice, but sampling the colors doesn't do much for us if we can't use it. So I'm going to turn off this debug, and on my action, I'm going to change this from none to set image base color. And I'm going to turn on this image object I have. And if I select that here, we're now setting the base color of the image. So this is a neat little way to kind of use this color somewhere else. As you can see, this default Lens Studio image, the tint is changing as we set that base color. So yeah, so there's no inherent base color here that we can set, but on this default image material, that's where that's at. All right, so that's cool. We can also set a material color. So let's get our mesh enabled. So I have this box. It has a simple PBR material. So what we need to do is we need to select our material itself down here in the resources panel. And whichever color you want to update, you need to make sure it's a 4-component, red, green, blue, and alpha. And you want to hover your mouse over this name, and you can see that property base color. We need to remember that property name. So I'm going to come back to my script. Let's select our material. And let's put in that material property. Make sure it is spelled correctly. It is case sensitive. And now you can see our base color on the material is being updated. And as we move around the scene, you can see the color is being updated based off what we're sampling. So that is pretty cool. Now, if you want a little extra control on customization, you can actually call a script and receive that color. So I'm going to turn on my color receiver script, and this isn't doing much. Let's go ahead and open this color receiver up. So we just have this function receive the color. We're receiving the color value, and we're just printing it out. And then we've exposed that function via the script API. So script.api.receiveColor gets our receiveColor function. So if we come here, we can choose our script component, and our function is receiveColor. Let's add that. And now you can see in the logger that we have a value being printed out, and it's being printed out on each frame update. So there's a little number here that's increasing, but as we move around, you can see that we're getting some more output being printed out. So let's look at one of these. This is just a vec4 with the RGB alpha values, X, Y, Z, and W. So if you have some custom script, you can receive that color and then do something else with it if you want. All right, so coming back to these exposed functions, we can write our own script and call some of these, or we can actually use a tween function. So I'm going to just enable this scene object. I'm going to add a component, a script, and let's go ahead and add the tween value. And let's set this to ping pong, so we have going back and forth. We want it to be a float. We want to keep it from 0 to 1 because we're going to set that X value. On the update callback, we want to call an API function. So let's select our color sampler script, and we are going to set the X value. So now you can see our color is changing. And if we come back here and we turn on our debug, you can see that our little box here is going back and forth as that tween is running. And so that is pretty cool. So you can dynamically call these XY positions. If we wanted, let's change this to an int. Let's say we go from 10 to 40, and we want to set the sample size. And now if we come back and turn on our debug, you can see our little sample square there growing and shrinking. So let's bump that up so it's a little easier to see. And so you can adjust that sample size as you want if you need to adjust that from your script. And then, of course, we have the sample colors function. You can call it just as you would call in the other colors. And then that will then call whatever action you have defined here.